Board of Supervisors to order. Mr. Howen, may I have a roll call, please?
Good morning, Supervisor Giommi, Supervisor White, Supervisor Horton, Supervisor Schutte,
Here.
Mayor Bagwell.
Here.
You have your quorum.
Thank you. Nancy, would you have technical come out and work on Stacy's iPad? Thank you.
Oh, and I'm gonna see how good it is at the frisbee.
Okay, we're on agenda item number 3, our invocation. I saw Brady. Come on up and get us started for the day.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to be here today. God, we thank you that you are so wonderful, glorious, and guiding in all of our ways. Father, I pray for blessing over the decisions and leading of our supervisors today, Lord. I pray for a clear meeting, communication, and hearts in which are desiring the betterment of our community. God, we thank you that we are able to be here today. We praise you for your wondrous works. God, we love you and we praise you. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. We're going to do our Pledge of Allegiance. Megan, would you do us the honor of leading the pledge? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. We're on agenda item 5, which is our opening public comment. Do I have any this morning? Beginning, Mr. French. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you, Mayor. Wasn't sure I was going to show up today. I'm just trying to do a lot of reviews, self-introspect, and some considerations of my past statements at meetings. I look forward to talking to each of the individuals that were brought up during those times in the future. And I'll go there when I go there. But the main thing is I've been doing a lot of homework. I was at the Wildlife Advisory meeting, and the legislations that they're working on are quite extensive. And I asked Cameron about that, and I will talk to him specifically about the items that I have concerns about and want to have put maybe in front of the Carson Board of Supervisors. Also, I'd like to say that I've looked up the foundation, the Hope May Adams Foundation, and individuals involved. I've also looked up the Foundation for Parks and Recreation, got a better sense of their activities, and was just given a whole lecture about their activities and the appreciation that that individual has for the efforts that they've made to improve the parks and recreation circumstances by their good deeds. And so, as I believe you're a member, Mayor, the deal for me is that as protective as the Director of Parks and Recreation is of her staff, I am just as protective of Prison Hill. It symbolizes to me a situation that I feel the community should be as alert to and aware of. As my training with EMT, it's ABC, air, blood, and then I can't remember what the C is right now. But the deal is that you got to have good air. I don't think people appreciate SAGE as much as they should in the process that we have in this valley, air quality. I also think that our wildlife situation is such that we have to be very economical about it, not only physically, but money-wise. And our survival really depends on our environment. And so I really appreciate people's looking into some of the foundations, if they can get involved with those that are helping with that, Muscle Power, other organizations, and see what it's like. I also like to put a shout out for the animal control folks. I just saw a dog running yesterday, and I'm going, geez, I know if they're caught by them, they're going to be taken care of. Thank you very much.
Do I have any public comment? Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 6A, which is approval of our minutes. Does any member have a change? Supervisor Giomi, a motion, please.
Move to approve Carson City Board of Supervisors meeting minutes of March 6, 2025 as presented.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. We're now on to agenda item 7, which is a presentation of a proclamation recognizing April 25 is National Child Abuse Prevention Month. So if you'll come down on the floor with me, we will have Megan. Someday we won't have to. Right? These are bittersweet issues sometimes that you need a month to, how about we just say all year long, we should prevent this, but come on over. Okay, whereas Nevada's children are one of the most precious resources in our state and provide the hope for a brighter tomorrow in Nevada. Whereas protecting children is everyone's business and everyone can promote the support of safe, healthy families in our community through partnering to protect children. And whereas child abuse is a community issue and finding solutions depends on involvement and partnerships among people throughout the community. Whereas effective child abuse prevention succeeds because of partnerships created between parents, practitioners, schools, faith communities, healthcare organizations, law enforcement agencies, community leaders, politicians, and the business community. Whereas all citizens need to be more aware of child abuse and neglect and its prevention within the community, and be involved in supporting parents to raise their children in a safe, nurturing society. Whereas public awareness and prevention regarding child abuse and neglect remains the best defense for our children and families. Now, therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, Mayor of Carson City, Nevada, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2025 Child Abuse Prevention Month. Like I said, I'll just go ahead and say, let's do it all year. Let's work on it all year long, huh? Okay, and encourage all citizens, community agencies, religious organizations, medical facilities, and businesses to partner in efforts to prevent child abuse, thereby strengthening the community in which we live. Right, and Megan, did you guys want to say anything about any activities? Or
Thank
anything that you're
you.
working on?
From the Division of Child and Family Services, we just want to recognize the community members and the many agencies and organizations that help protect our children in the community every day. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Okay, did you get your picture? Not yet. It's not real if we don't have a picture. So. Thank you. Okay, again, thank you so much for all you do. Really, thank you. Thanks for what you do. Give everybody a moment. Okay. Okay, we're gonna move to our consent agenda. I've had a request from Supervisor White to pull 8C. Is there anything else? Okay, I'll accept a motion with the exception of 8C.
I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of item 8A, 8B, 9A, 10A, and 10B, all as presented.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. We will now go to agenda item 8C. Hope, you're going to give us just a small briefing of what closure is this
Sure.
specifically?
This
What are they
is
trying to do?
Brewery Arts Center's request for a closure for the Levitt AMP concert series. It's, I believe, 10 different concerts. You may recall that when you approved the street closure policy on March 21st, 2024, what you said at that time was that the Levitt concert series was approved and the Public Works Director could close the streets. the street closures have expanded from what you had approved and what was typically happening. And so that's why this item's before you.
Mr. Supervisor White, you have a question or comment or thoughts?
Yeah, as we discussed, not only at the meeting when we approved this, at the board retreat, we also talked about we were not going to allow special events to become a situation where these businesses literally extend the footprint of their business into the public right-of-way. And I would say, in this instance, when you're asking for 10 closures, you're doing exactly that. And that's not what this special event street closure was intended to do.
Does any other member have a thought or? So I will just say I find myself, so on the overall thing, I actually agree with Supervisor White. We don't want to close, the streets should be closed seldom, right? They belong to the public. They are the way they get around our community, and so it should be seldom. I think I'm a little bit more interested, though, is what has specifically caused you to want to expand your closure? I think that I love the 11 Amp series. I think that the community does too. But why do we have a need to add in King Street?
Honestly, for us, it's public safety more than anything. I think that the amount of people we get for Levitt fits perfectly well within our footprint of our two buildings that we have on King Street there. But, you know, tenants of the building across the street, which is an office building, the 400 building, they like to have a little party on their lawn there. So there's people going back and forth the street quite a bit. And I've just seen so many near misses or people not stopping in the crosswalk, or one of our volunteers was crossing the street and they were waiting for a car to go by and they came by so fast it blew a bunch of chairs out of their hand. So really for us, it's just the public safety issue. There's no open businesses on the street. There's no residences right across from us. So, you know, if there were, I think we would be less inclined to ask for it. But since that's the only thing going on the street and we have such a large crowd of people that are going back and forth, public safety is really number one. And then also just in the event of any sort of emergency where there's an evacuation, you know, it's a very porous perimeter, if you will. There's no specific egress. So I think just overall, it's a lot safer to have that section of the street open so people can pass back and forth freely. And a lot of folks are coming in from the neighborhoods, so you get a ton of foot traffic crossing the street there.
Well, this closure isn't strictly asking for King Street. It's asking for additional streets as well. And that's my whole point. If you're having safety problems, I would suggest you hire some security or crossing guards or something. But extending your footprint into a more or less permanent extension into the public right-of-way is not acceptable to me. I mean, you've already got Minnesota Street completely closed between the two blocks. I'm not up for more.
And if I could just jump in, Second Street there has been, for years and years, you guys have approved the Second Street side, and we use that for ADA, it's handicap parking, just so we have a safe spot for our disabled neighbors to come to the show as well.
So the only additional street is King Street?
No, there's
else?
more.
No, what else, sir? Give us an idea of what
Sure.
we're trying to do on that campus for
Understood.
this.
The expansion is West King from South Division to Thompson, and South Minnesota from West 3rd to West 2nd. And what you'll see is a couple things, and I actually share Supervisor White's concerns in that when we look at these special events, we have to consider the venue and whether or not the street closure is necessary for safety or if it's an expansion of a venue. In this case, we've put conditions in place where they indicated the street closure was necessary for handicap parking. We've asked for an explanation of how they'll verify that will be used for handicap parking, and what is the plan? What is the plan to allow people to access their homes while the event's going on? We've also, in the case of West King, I consulted with the sheriff's office because I too was concerned about West King. And I said to the sheriff, do you think this is necessary as part of the concert series for safety? He said he did think it was. He also felt the food trucks contributed to an unsafe situation. So the staff has recommended that there be no food trucks on West King. It's purely closed for safety purposes, not for commerce, if you will. But again, on page 49 of your packet, the two expansions are West King from South Division to Thompson, and from South Minnesota from West 3rd to West 2nd.
So where are the food trucks? Where are you going to put the food trucks? That is the retail expansion. So let me understand that. So currently you've been using food trucks. Where are they now going to park or go?
We have the, yeah, we'll let.
Because I think
Hope
it's
refer to the back.
important distinction that we understand it's not an expansion of retail opportunity for you. I think that's really what we're all after here, is not having our street used in a, and you used to put the trucks there, right?
I don't believe our objection was parsed
Retail.
in the realm of retail. That's not it at all. That's not my objection today.
Where?
Food trucks are on 2nd from Division to Thompson.
Thompson, that's okay. Huh. Seems interesting to me. So that's across from the school? On that Thompson there or something? Where are we?
Can I call my
Sorry.
deputy director to the?
We just really want the public to understand what we're looking at, and I think that Supervisor White's point that we are consistent throughout our community on what our policy is and what the rules are. So let me say this differently.
Can we bring the map up, perhaps?
Oh.
I don't know.
Oh, never mind.
You know, is that, again, that we're consistent, and for me, it is about, you're not expanding the actual activity of the concerts that we already approved.
Yes.
It's not to bring in more people because you're only limited for that space anyway. Is that correct? I mean, they can only have whatever the answer is, 1,000 people in that parking lot or 2,000. I'm going to assume there's already a crowd control answer on the facility itself. So I'm just trying to get, are we expanding the business activity or simply the safety component to keep everyone that's utilizing it now safe?
For community development and reviewing this request, what we considered is exactly, to a large extent, what the mayor's saying and what Supervisor White said. Our concern was, one, that Brewery Arts be able to have a successful event, and I think Valerie's going to speak to the specifics on how they'll set up. And to the extent there was an expansion on the street closures, we were concerned not just for the residents who live along those streets and those businesses, but the folks who, by virtue of shutting down those streets, were suddenly going to get traffic that they typically wouldn't get because it was going to divert from King Street. And so that's why we were really, we really wanted to, we recognized the need for handicap parking. And so we looked closely at that. And in fact, Cecilia Rice and Natalie Keel from my office, who were really the main people working on this, were very vocal about the functionality in terms of handicap parking and how that all would work. And again, I was very concerned about King Street, which is why I consulted with the sheriff. So I don't know if that answers your question in terms of the specifics on how the event's going to work. My focus was really the impacts of the event and the impacts of a street closure.
Supervisor Horton?
The sole purpose for closing King Street is pedestrian safety. Is that correct? That's what you said, right?
Yes.
So you can hire a crossing guard, someone who's certified to perform that task and provide that pedestrian safety through that means rather than closing that entire street, right? Is that a possibility?
It is a possibility. Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you.
Supervisor Giomi.
Yeah, I, like probably a lot of people in this room have attended that event over the years. And I've kind of always wondered, and I think the food trucks undoubtedly contribute to the potential for a negative event where they were located. So I think moving them is a great idea. I'm not that hung up, frankly, on closing King Street. I think from a safety perspective, anyone who's gone to that event knows how often people are going across King Street. So, this is a nonprofit organization that's providing a community benefit that, in my mind, is, necessary for a vibrant community. I don't see the downside in allowing the closures personally. Can you tell me why wouldn't you put the food trucks in your parking lot? Is there a reason why you wouldn't do that?
Valerie Moore for the record. Currently, because we have the performance hall and our regular brewery building, and there's the parking lot for the performance hall. Currently, the food trucks exist in that space. So people aren't crossing King Street for the food trucks as in the past. So that is, nobody has to cross the street to go to a food truck if they're at the event. The King Street closure would just there's a lot of people that camp out on the other side, like on the grassy knoll in the 4th Street building. And there's no vaping or smoking on our campus. So if anytime anybody does any of that, not saying we condone that, but they have to cross the street. They can't do it on campus. So currently, the food trucks, you do not have to cross the street to go to food truck. And we don't put food trucks all the way down to Division. It's only at Minnesota up to that street, Bordwick Thompson. They're in that footprint, yeah. So, in the blue, okay. So the food trucks go from Minnesota up to Thompson.
On what street?
On King.
It's in the parking lot between Thompson and King and Second.
It's on
and Thompson.
Minnesota.
So it's only in that one
Minnesota and
parking lot.
Second
There's
is where you put your food truck.
yes,
Yes.
in our parking lot that runs. Yes. Yes, correct. Uh-huh.
And a few times they've been on the opposite side of the street, the south side of the street as well.
The south.
Mm-hmm.
No. Not they're not usually, no.
Well, that's where I bought my coffee.
Oh, okay. Sorry then. It depends on who comes also because there's different sizes, but
Yes, they've been on Second between Minnesota and Thompson. And if you have parked on King, on the Brewery Arts side of the street, so you don't have to cross the street, so the line forms into the parking lot of Brewery Arts Center, because that is public parking on an open street, so it seemed reasonable for them to go there.
Well, and you have people that are crossing the street to get to the food truck, the ones that are not on your property. So that's where like you said, the back
they're
and
welcome
forth
to come
is
onto
done.
our property.
Yeah,
Like, we
instead,
don't
but
make
like
them
I
sit
think
across
you
the
had,
street.
I think you have the right answer of why not.
Yeah.
I think you might have had that figured out. Supervisor Shooty?
Thank you. So if King Street is closed, then the detour is on Musser, is that correct? Or one of the considered detours? And yeah, I would imagine so.
Rick's like, I don't remember where we set up.
Or, right, right.
Pretty sure you attended now, aren't you?
Oh, I knew this was coming. Rick Cooley for the record. It would probably go down to the north, Minnesota to, what's the next one, over 4th? No, yeah. Second.
Third,
Over to 3rd and then down
and then
to
Musser.
Division.
Right.
Okay. How many vehicles do you think, I mean, Rick, do you see this as a potential problem?
On a Saturday night, not really. And, we do one, if it is a problem, then we move them a little further down Minnesota to, maybe down to Musser or whatever, we can make adjustments. But as far as traffic is concerned, I don't see it being an issue on a Saturday night.
Yeah, I have attended quite a few and will continue. I just really think it's a wonderful opportunity for our community. I love the summer series. I know people really look forward to it. Not only community members, but visitors. And so it definitely is a positive impact on our community and our businesses. I think, I appreciate the idea of public safety, and I appreciate the idea of keeping things safe and making movement as flexible and easy and safe and just what makes sense. I think that's appropriate. I appreciate Supervisor White's concern, but I think in the context of the Levitt Amp series and the history of Levitt Amp and making changes as we go to meet the needs of the concert series and the community's needs, I am comfortable with these street closures.
So let me just ask in general, I see this as two components of the street closure. So I'm not sure I'm as convinced about King Street as I am potentially about South Minnesota from West 3rd to West 2nd, where you're trying to do ADA access. So I see those as two different street closure issues, and I certainly want our disabled community to have an equal opportunity to attend the concerts and to be in a safe parking area to accommodate that. So I'm not sure, is there a difference for you guys? I'm not as convinced about King Street because I think you have some alternatives that you could do, and I'm not so sure the safety is as large an issue as, protecting an ADA access for the concert. So I wonder if that's something we can come to an agreement on. Supervisor Horton?
I'm just curious, I agree with the mayor's comments on access for handicap parking. I think that's important. Has anybody talked to the residents on Minnesota about the proposed plan or gotten any information from the neighborhood?
We generally check in with them every year. I can tell you this house on the corner here is Mikey, our director of operations. All of the neighbors right there have always been very supportive of the events and usually come to the events and have had no issues with, closing 2nd Street or people coming through Minnesota Street.
Do you have a plan for the handicap parking, how you'll post it and police it? What will you do with that?
Yeah, we shut down the street with barricades, and then we have a volunteer, one of our wonderful volunteers who's been with us quite a few years. He just checks in vehicle by vehicle. He's disabled himself, so it's a cause very dear to his heart, and he thinks it's really important, and I certainly trust his discretion in who he allows into the ADA area.
Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor White?
So as far as the handicap parking, yeah, I agree. We should make accommodations for those folks, but I would also suggest that the parking lot over at the Far Eastern building, the old brewery, has plenty of parking for that. In fact, there are handicap designated spots there now. As far as the idea that this is not an expansion of the operation, contrary to that, we heard testimony already today that the intent is to accommodate the party that takes place across the street at the office building.
That was one factor I interjected.
So, again, We already have, Minnesota was put together as a pass-through road for that entire neighborhood. We've already blocked it off, where Minnesota can't be used in the manner that it was intended to use to begin with. I say we, the Board of Supervisors, long before our time. This is an extension of the business.
Supervisor Giomi.
To me, I think a good compromise might be to allow King Street to remain open. And if you feel that there's safety issues, come up with a way to address that on your own. But I would agree with the other closures. Even if it is an expansion, in my mind, I'm not that concerned about that. I think it's a key series of events for our community. So I think this is a small way that we can contribute to that. So that seems to me like a good compromise. And yeah, so that's where I'll leave my comment.
Okay. Let's see, do we have any public comment on this item? Hello?
Hi, my name's Kimmy Cole, and I've been connected in the Carson City community since the 1970s. I have lived in Reno and Douglas County and all over northern Nevada, and one of the things that I found is I just absolutely fell in love with Carson City. And one of the things that really stands out to me when I'm talking to people around the country is, our community and our culture and ways that people can enjoy themselves and get outdoors and do those things. So I am all for keeping that community vibe. And obviously, I'm aware I don't want too much disruption, but, a lot of the time disruption is part of our daily existence. What about road construction? What about other special events? It does happen, and I think for a brief period of time during one of these amazing events that addressing the safety and the ability for people to circulate in the area is really important to continue that community vibe. I know that I enjoy so well, and a lot of people I talk to enjoy so well. So I appreciate all the supervisors' time, appreciate the ability to speak here today, and I think it's a good thing.
Thank you. Do I have any other public comment? Okay, then I'll bring it back up here. For a motion, Supervisor White is requested to make the motion.
I move to approve the street closure of 2nd Street from South Minnesota to West 3rd Street per condition number 2 on page 48 of the agenda.
Do I have a second? Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do we need any further discussion,
Yeah,
Supervisor? Just to clarify what you're getting?
Just to clarify, is that the other street that you requested closure? So we're only talking about
The ADA part.
the ADA parking and not
Not
What are
King
the
Street.
3 streets what are the streets that you proposed with this action to close specifically?
Sorry, Spike McGuire for the record. The proposed this year was King Street and Minnesota Street between 3rd and 2nd, and 2nd you guys have always closed 2nd in the past, so that is not an
That's
This
addition.
is allowing the Minnesota component solely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Supervisor Schutte, did you need more clarification?
I don't need more clarification. I just, in the spirit of compromise, and I believe in working together and finding the best way forward. But I do think this is an opportunity to see, assuming King Street isn't closed, and to see how it works, how these other options for safety and crossing, and let's see how that work. And perhaps make decisions as necessary. I think that'd be reasonable.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. And have an enjoyable summer, everyone, with this series. Curtis was the second. Okay, we are now on to agenda item, 12A, discussion and possible action hold on, let me get there. Is do I need a title read? No, huh? Where is the resolution? Okay. So we're going to do discussion and possible action concerning a resolution authorizing the sale of 0.13 acres of vacant Carson City land, parcel number 010-542-01. Mr. Hone, may I have the title, please?
Resolution 2025-R-5, a resolution regarding the sale of Carson City property known as Assessor Parcel Number 010-542-01, approximately 0.13 acres under NRS 244.281, paragraph 1, paragraph E, paragraph 1, parenthesis I or parenthesis double I. Finding the APN 010-542-01 is a remnant parcel and is too small to establish an economically viable use. Finding that the sale of APN 010-542-01 is in the best interest of Carson City, and directing the sale of APN 010-542-01.
Thank you. Mr. Nellis? Tell us just a little bit why it needs to go.
Good morning, Mayor. For the record, Robert Ellis, City Asset Services Manager, and with me is Audrey Link, our real property analyst. So this is a...
Welcome. New, right? Okay.
This is a remnant parcel that was created due to Airport Road being constructed. So it's a triangular piece that really the city doesn't have another purpose for or can utilize. So we had it appraised for $20,000, and it seems the highest and best use would be to dispose of it to the adjoining property owners.
Okay. Does any member have a question? No questions? Okay, is there any public comment on this item? We're letting you off way too easy. There's got to be more complexities for new people.
This is very easy.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
It's okay, I'm okay with it.
I'll accept a motion. Supervisor Horton.
I move to approve resolution number 2025-R-5.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you so much and welcome. Okay, we're now going to move on to agenda item 13A. That simple motion sure had a lot of paper attached to it. It was like for something so easy. Yeah. Discussion and possible action regarding the ratification of a previously submitted application for the U.S. Forest Service fiscal year 25 wildfire defense grant in the amount of $3,967,780 and subject to a waivable 25% local match requirement of $991,945 to fund wildfire prevention activities from January 26th through December 2031 in the southeast quadrant of Carson City, including the Prison Hill Recreation Area, and authorization for the mayor to accept the grant if awarded. Are you going to give us a briefing on this one? How come we're late getting approval? Go ahead. You're
Good
gonna
morning.
have to just say it on the record.
All righty. So, good morning. Kevin Nyberg for the record. This one was, like you previously mentioned, was one that we put in for last year. with some of the other grants that came through, we were going to hold off on this one, but they actually approached us. We were points away from receiving this grant last year, and some of their criteria changed. And so they actually reached back out to us and said, hey, we think that this is a good project. We really support it. And we think that you'll be just put over the edge this year and be more eligible to receive it with a few changes that they've had on their end. So we'll be eligible for this. And then the reason that we followed through on it and are going to do it is because the grant does provide fuels reduction work to reduce wildfire risk in the area. We do work currently on the west side, on the north side. That southeast side currently is not being worked. So this would complete kind of that halo that we're going for around the city for wildfire reduction and give us a more complete package around the city. And I just wanted to put a couple things on the record. So we are going to do that with our two existing crews that we've already established through the other grants that we have currently in the city. However, this one does include a program coordinator. So through all the programs that we're doing wildfire defense workshops. We're doing defensible space inspections provided to residents around the city. And we've just identified the need that with all the work that we're doing, with all the grant recording and reporting that goes into all these grants, another position would be very helpful, 100% funded by the grant. And so we're going to write those into these grants going forward. And this was in the previous grant as well. It also includes a 5-year strategic plan that we want to do for the wildland fuels reduction program as a whole. So that will be completely funded by this grant, which is something that we feel was just going to augment the program and get an outside look at what we're doing and verify. And then on the match, it does have the match waiver. So the 25%, I know that currently we do not have a funding source for that. So if we do not get the match waiver, then we will rescind our application for the grant. So yeah, we're asking for submittal and acceptance on this grant.
Just again, to clarify on the record, if you look at page 324 of the grant application, it's important that we recognize about, I don't know, not quite the middle, the program coordinator is actually a new position. So if we get the waiver and accept this grant, it does include a new position.
Yes.
That new position would be subject to our standardized rule of grant-funded
Grants.
positions.
Correct.
I just
Understood.
want it on the record clearly to
Yep.
everyone that they recognize when the grant ends, if new funding outside of our general fund isn't found, the position goes away. So, but
Exactly.
just so everyone's aware, whenever we're applying for wildland fire activities, it's either funding existing crews or potentially has, you could end up having a huge area that you're going to do and hire more wildland crews, but that everything under any grants that detail those out, those would be considered in our grant positions. So just putting that on the record. Supervisor Giomi?
Just a quick question. If the, I think you said in talking to you that you believe the waiver is attainable because of the, it's an underserved area or yeah, I'm probably not saying that right, but essentially you've gotten an indication that you think that it's likely to be waived.
Yeah, that's correct. Just meeting their criteria for the community economics of the area.
Okay.
We feel that we're pretty confident. And we've been talking with them and going through the application process last year.
Mm-hmm.
We would have qualified for it last year had we gotten it. So we're really confident.
You would
that
have gotten the
we-
waiver.
Yes,
Had
correct.
you received the grant.
Yes, correct.
That's good news.
Yeah.
If is the waiver, not the waiver, sorry, is the match, does the match have to be hard dollars? Or can it be soft?
It can be in kind as well. But it's, 25, obviously,
Yeah.
for a
So
$4
you
million
think
grant.
you probably couldn't meet the soft match or meet it as an in-kind if,
Possibly
We got the
through
grant?
equipment billing and things of that sort that we're providing. But honestly, at this point, we haven't looked in enough to where we'd be confident that we could meet it
Okay.
at this point. But
I
if we
just would
get it
encourage you
and,
to see where that falls. If we think we can meet the match, I'd hate to have this money go away.
yeah,
So if the waiver's looks like it's not going to be attainable, I don't think I'm comfortable changing the motion, but if it's not, I would encourage you to look and perhaps come back to us.
okay,
Because I don't think I'm comfortable just blanketly saying that right now, because it's a lot of money.
mhm,
So I need some assurances from you that you guys can make that work. But I know we've done that in the past. Obviously, I'm going back many years, but, we got very creative about working with the people in that neighborhood and having them fill out timesheets for any work they did in their yards in the parameter area. And, you'd be surprised at how many people who have an acre work in their yard. I know because my back pays for it.
Me too.
So, you do quite a bit of work. So anyway, don't want to run that in the ground, but that would be my advice.
I agree. And it was just the large amount, we thought we could get real close.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to commit that right now.
Thank you.
But yeah, thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Is there any public comment on this item? Mr. French.
Thank you, Mayor. Denny French, Carson City, Nevada, 13A, or yes. Hit a nerve. A consideration for the Prison Hill conservation easement status. That has been stretched to the point where Phase 3 has been allowed, which took out 4.2 miles of virgin sage. My concern is that area has been broached as far as its tranquility and natural environmental aspects. I am a person that had an opportunity to not only practically be involved with wildfire protections when I worked for the Department of Forestry for a short season. I went to small fires. I went to bump up station moves. I went to some large ones where I actually was put in a position of having to start backfires in areas where off the road brush was set on fire next to 35-foot trees. I walked that length, fire, oil burnt, I'm not sure the equipment told, but it's basically like a garden spout waterer, where you go along and you put fueled or flamed fuel on fire and start a fire. I understand after having been through fires in Pasadena, Altadena, and then this latest fire that nearly destroyed the home I grew up with in, and then much of the neighborhoods there. I am very conscious and appreciative of the fire department's efforts. In this case, whatever is done, I hope is done with the consideration of the environment there. I know that fires in Pasadena, Altadena were predicated by the fuel floating through embers and such, and it wouldn't have mattered how many streets that would be considered fire breaks. You didn't have any regard for the man-made fire breaks up on the hills. Those things were just washed away when a big fire gets going. I'm not sure that doing what you're considering on Prison Hill is more important than maybe putting a fire break right behind those homes, and then maybe asking them to make sure the roofs are appropriate, that their foliage in their own yards is such that would keep their houses perhaps protected. But I don't think getting rid of nature is the way that we're going to deal with fires. In some places, it's going to be necessary, but we have a fire break now, Phase 3 of the trail, that you have put in. That's a fire break. Fuel reduction means habitat reduction, and that on Prison Hill is precious. It's one of, after having gone to the fire, thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other public comment? Okay, I'll bring it back up here. Supervisor Giomi.
I move to ratify the submission of the grant application and authorize the mayor to accept the grant if the local match requirement is waived.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. The record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 14A, discussion and possible action on a proposed collective bargaining agreement between Carson City and the Carson City Sheriff's Supervisory Association on behalf of the Carson City Sheriff's Office employees with the rank of lieutenant and captain. It'll be retroactive to July 1, 2024 and expires June 30th, 2028 with an estimated fiscal impact of $1,093,815 above the 5-year projections included in the fiscal year 25 city budget, which was previously approved by the board. Ms. Paulson.
Good morning. I just wanted to note that this is a 4-year contract. When I was reviewing the item again yesterday, I noticed in the fiscal impact section that it incorrectly referenced a 5-year contract. So just wanted to reiterate that it is a 4-year contract for a total cost of $4.2 million. However, much of that was already incorporated when we were doing the fiscal year 25 budget and the 5-year projections that we do, that the city does annually during our budget process. So the additional amount that will have to be accounted for is the $1.1 million, $175,621 of that would affect this current year, this current fiscal year. I just wanted to say thank you to the negotiating teams. I know there was a lot of time and effort put into this process, and I'm glad we came to this outcome. Thanks.
Does any member have a question? Is there any public comment on this item? Careful what you say.
Hello, my name is Brett Binley. I'm the president of the Sheriff Supervisory Association, representing the lieutenants and captains. I just want to take a moment to thank teams on both sides. We came to this agreement a little differently than we normally would, but we both were able to come to an effective agreement that I think represents both sides of the concerns of fairly compensating the lieutenants and captains within the city, but also keeping in mind of the financial restrictions and resources that are here in the city, and that's quite a balance to try to strike. So I appreciate both sides, and thank you.
Any other public comment on this item? Okay, I'll bring it back up here for a motion. Who wants to do it? Supervisor Horton.
I move to approve the CBA and authorize the district attorney's office to make any necessary revisions that are clerical and not substantive when finalizing the CBA.
Do I have a second? I'll do it. Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no.
No.
Thank you. Let the record reflect it was 4 yeses, 1 no by Supervisor White. Thank you. And we don't want to see it for 4 more years, so have a great time and keep us all safe while you're at it, okay? Thanks. All right, we're going to now move on to agenda item 14B, which is discussion and I didn't say that right. I don't mean we don't ever want to see your faces. I meant no more negotiations for 4 more years, just in case that came out wrong. Discussion and possible action regarding coordination of the legislative activity on pending state legislation before the Nevada legislature and whether to adopt any official positions on anything. Mr. Gresh.
Good morning, Supervisors. For the record, I'm Cameron Gresh, Carson City Government Affairs Liaison. The 83rd session of the Nevada legislature is in its 61st day, which means that we are nearly halfway done with our 120-day biennial legislative session. I have updates for you on AB 32 as well as 5 other new to our discussion bills. Before I go into any more detail, I do want to point out some upcoming deadlines that are quite important for the legislative process, beginning with Friday, April 11th. That is the deadline for first committee passage. Bills that do not get voted out of their committees by this time are effectively dead. Basically, a week and a few days after that, you have first House passage, where those bills that survived their committee vote now must survive a floor vote before moving to the second chamber. Again, if you fail at this stage, the bill is dead. And so just some kind of procedural stuff to go over there. I'll go ahead and tuck into some general descriptions of the bills that I am going to go over today, the 5 of them, and then I can pause, do one at a time or go all one at a time. So we'll go ahead and start with AB 32 that we all know and love. We've had a hearing in the Assembly Growth and Infrastructure Committee, which went very well. We were passed out of that work session without amendment. However, we were referred by a legislator to the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means as a result of a fiscal note that was placed on our bill by the Legislative Counsel Bureau of, I might point out, $0 in terms of impact to this institution. And so for that reason, I will be going before the Assembly Ways and Means Committee at this time tomorrow morning with a much more focused and narrow presentation, specifically stating that as we understand the bill and the interim committee process, we do not foresee any expenses of the legislator or any fiscal impact as a result of our study. And then after that, it will be simply up to the legislature to agree with us and pass us out of the committee. And then also LC, the Legislative Counsel Bureau, will be expected to testify as well and explain their fiscal notes. So that's what will be happening tomorrow morning. And then after that, we will simply be working to make sure that AB 32 passes out of the Assembly, which every conversation we've had to date on the bill indicates that that is a very, very likely possibility. So with that being said, that concludes my update on AB 32, if the board has any questions.
So, Cameron, on AB 32, because it was referred to Ways and Means, is it now exempt? So we don't have to worry, right? Did it receive an exemption?
It actually received an exemption when it was filed.
Okay.
So actually not before this, which yes, absolutely, you are correct.
Okay, because it doesn't say on the bill copy that it's exempt, but that you gave us, but I thought so. Okay, so we don't have to worry about April 11th and scurrying. We get a little more opportunity. Okay, thank you. Anybody else have a question on 32? B32? Okay, next one.
Okay, so moving on to AB 332. This legislation is proposed by our own Assemblyman P.K. O'Neill. Very quick, brief overview. Assembly Bill 332 proposes revisions to laws governing industrial insurance. It modifies the responsibilities of administrators and third-party administrators of associations of self-insured employers, eliminates certain bonding and auditing requirements, and discontinues the subsequent injury accounts for self-insured employers, associations, or private carriers. The provision of note for our purposes would be that the bill also removes the statutory wage cap used in calculating industrial insurance premiums. These changes update primarily NRS chapters 616A through 616D. This bill did receive a hearing on Monday in which Assemblyman O'Neill, alongside Pro Group Insurance President Richard Staub, went over their reasons for bringing the bill forward. They identified the statutory wage cap repeal as a primary reason for bringing the bill forward. Their main argument was that the $36,000 cap on calculating premiums essentially creates an unfunded liability for them, given that wages have risen since the provision was put in place in 1995. There are also other parts of this bill that amend recommend certain parts of obviously self-insured associations, but the provision of note for us would be the removal of the premium cap, as it would have the potential to obviously increase premiums, perhaps substantially. Also, some of the technical changes in the bill could change how we need to predict some of this spending on with our insurance carriers by opening up the wage cap to just basically completely removing it if the city were ever to have a situation in which, after it has already predicted to its carriers what it thinks its costs are going to be, it must remain within 10%. But say, God forbid, there's some kind of disaster in Carson City, then we're looking at hundreds of hours of overtime on the part of our emergency services. Could this, raise, if there's workplace comp issues, could this potentially raise premiums? Sure. And so that's something that we're monitoring closely. I will just point out that AB 469, which is further down in my list, does this exact same salary cap repeal and a whole lot more. It's much more dense. It's the densest bill we have in our packet today. I'll go over it much more briefly, because even though it is bigger, the part of it that we do care about is this exact identical provision. And that one's from Senator Danielle Gallant, and I'll go over AB 469 in a moment. But this is AB 332. Note that Assemblyman O'Neill did provide an amendment to the bill that made technical changes to the allowing the subsequent injury accounts to remain and continue funding. However, the amendment did not touch the provision that we identified as being most relevant to Carson City, which would be the salary cap repeal on premium calculation. So I have information on each section of the bill, but I don't need to go through it line by line unless there are questions. Section 18, and I believe it's going up in section 15 are the sections of the bill that concern the salary cap that I just discussed. And so with that, that is my summary of AB 332. And we do have our Director of Finance, Sherry Russell Benaboo, here with us to answer maybe those more technical questions about its potential impact to our insurance premiums, but I can answer legislative questions. Like I said, this bill did have a hearing. It has not yet had a work session. That could change. I'm getting agendas for these committees by the minute, and so I will make sure to follow up after this meeting. And we have also identified other stakeholders in the legislature that are similarly potentially impacted by this provision, and are working with them to determine, some of them are proposing their own amendments, and we're working to analyze how those would impact us if adopted. But the bill has not had a work session yet.
So in general, the question is, unless I just can't find it in here or it's in another section. So there's no change to a deemed wage. So for those that don't receive pay, but they volunteer or do things for you. So the deemed wage is staying at the 36,000 and the 500 per month for like our volunteers and things like that. So doesn't appear that the deemed wage is changing. But my question really comes for, does the benefit change? So if the premium is based on the 36,000 currently, was their benefit for an injured worker limited to that 36,000 or their real wage? And I think I need to understand if this is just a premium issue, but doesn't change what a worker would receive under workers' comp.
So I believe your interpretation is correct, but I would need to follow up with the bill sponsor and then come back to you with more technical information, as insurance premiums are not my bag, but I'm happy to follow up and make sure that our interpretation is correct.
And then while you're at it, when you're setting an insurance rate, if it's against 36, so just pretend, why wouldn't it be triple? If you've got an answer, Jill, come on up. Is why don't they just adjust the rate? Why change the wage? So I guess I'm trying to understand the rationale for it. Yeah.
Jill Valdez, Risk Management Coordinator for the record. A deemed wage is actually in 616A. The provision that we're talking about here is in 616B. So deemed wage has to do with if you have a volunteer who does not make any money, establishing if they have an injury, what you would pay that injured worker for compensation. 616B, talking about the $36,000 cap, is purely for determining the premium for insurance. So it does not affect any compensation that the injured worker receives. It's just a mechanism for providing some stability in the insurance. So for example, as you were referencing, when you use the $36,000 cap, it provides excellent stability for you, the board, and for the finance department, because that cap, when we give the wages and they're capped, it means that they're not variable when there's a lot of different overtime or differences in what you pay new employees, changes. One of the most important things in finance is knowing that when we go in January, February, March to get a price for the insurance, that we can be fairly certain that it's going to be that price throughout the year within a 10% margin. And the $36,000 cap allows that. If you remove the cap entirely, there can be wild shifts because we're projecting future wages in January, February, March, but we don't know what the actual wages will be until the end of the next fiscal year. So we pay a premium up front based on an estimate. At the end of the year, we have to come around and
True it up.
pay, right, true up. So currently as it stands, finance is able to stay under 2% variance between their estimate and the actual, which is pretty amazing. So I've been impressed with your finance department as I'm a new to that department. But if you remove that cap, there's some wiggle room probably where the cap doesn't necessarily have to be $36,000, but the bill is suggesting entirely removing any cap. And so if there's no cap, then there's no cap on whatever you pay to any given employee or groups of employees, and there can be wild variations. The insurance carrier in the policy wants us to project within 10%. If we can't project within 10%, then there is a penalty. We have to pay the additional. And there's also a minimum. So let's say that you have a fantastic year. You have no extra expenses. And so we actually come in 20% below, which is possible if there's so much variation. You still have to pay that minimum. So you don't get a break if you go below it, but you still get a penalty for not having been within 10%. If you go over, you're paying over and you're paying a penalty.
Supervisor Schutte?
I have a question about section 4, and it's on page 6 of the bill. I'm just wondering, what's the genesis of the change taking, striking out an association's administrator, and it's striking out the employed by an association of self-insured public may not, and create it as a may. Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with the provision you're talking about, and then I can go back and I'm trying to pull up the transcript of Assemblyman O'Neill and Mr. Staub's testimony. That was a very technical change, I think relating to like a specific experience from one of their associations, and I can give you more detail when I am able to load the transcript. But to my knowledge, it was not a major topic of discussion. He moved on very quickly to others. That seemed much more as a technical fix, but as far as the legislative history behind that particular provision, I would have to follow up with you to give you more information on the genesis, as it was not discussed in detail at the hearing.
All right. I'd appreciate hearing more. Thank you.
Supervisor Giomi.
It's a head scratcher to me as to how this isn't going to cost us money. Why do we have why does it not have a local fiscal note? Why? Do we know why?
No, but that's something we're working with the other.
Note on a bill that has no fiscal note.
It says no. Can you believe that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. They
Yeah.
put a fiscal note on
Yeah.
our bill,
Yeah.
which literally has no
With a zero.
financial impact. No financial impact.
I
And
did
this bill,
submit
which has a
an-
potential to cost us a lot of money.
Yeah,
has
we
no
ran the
fiscal note.
numbers. It's supposed to, the premium would go up 146%.
It also
Yeah.
doesn't say unfunded mandate. It's not stamped like
So,
you said. Anyway.
so I did submit an unsolicited fiscal note, which we're allowed to do pretty much on any bill.
You rebel, you.
I mean, I know it's our PK O'Neill and we, don't want to fight, but this is going to cost us a lot of money. So we
Just
need
to
they
borrow-
need to be aware of
To
that
borrow
before
Mayor
they pass
Kroll's
it.
comment, you back to Dragon Lady, huh?
Yeah.
You went full Dragon Lady on it, huh?
Kind of have to sometimes.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah, embrace the dragon. It's one of my favorite Bob comments. Not because it was directed at you, but
No,
just-
it's one of
just
mine
because.
too.
So, yeah, that's that it's not good, and yeah, okay. I mean, so even if a potential amendment might be to agree to raise the cap as opposed to eliminating it, if we're looking for common ground somewhere, that might be right an olive branch of sorts to offer up, but to just let it roam free seems, because undoubtedly there are going to be instances. I'm just thinking of fires. Even if we don't have emergencies in our community, it is likely, given the environment, that we will have them outside of our community in which our personnel will be responding. And yes, we'll get reimbursed, but that's not going to matter to this. I mean, even though that money comes back to us, there's going to be wide variations in, all we need is a snowstorm like we had 2-3 years ago. And it's crazy. Okay, thank you.
Well, like Joe was saying, if we have a bunch of termination savings, a bunch of people leave,
Yeah,
then they're not reimbursing us
even
if
if we're good.
overestimate.
Yeah, even if we're
Exactly.
good and we spend less, we're penalized.
Right, exactly.
Jill Valdez again for the record. I believe part of the reason there may not be a fiscal impact request is I was communicating with the Nevada Self-Insurers Association, who works closely with Pro Group. I don't think they realized or recognized the impact for self-insurers like Carson City purchasing excess insurance. I think they didn't realize that those $36,000 caps applied there as well. So I have brought that to NSIA's attention and advised them of the financial impact that would have.
In your opinion, have you seen any of these workers' comp insurance companies going broke?
Particularly for excess insurance, I'm not sure that they're going broke necessarily, but excess insurance we are down to really one viable option for our bid. But Pro Group is not the excess carrier. They are basically an insurer of the self-insured
They're a
association.
primary carrier, basically.
So, yes, so they're looking to assess their premiums. The way most of the industry has done that with the $36,000 cap in place is they know it's there, and so they adjust the rate per $100 of payroll. I don't know that we have had a lot of insurance companies going out of business because of that $36,000 cap. I'm not aware of any.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we won't take action until after we do public comment if we want any. So next.
So, staying in the insurance realm, you'll recall that I mentioned earlier in my testimony AB 469. So this bill does exactly what the previous one did, except it also goes into much more detail. In common with AB 332, it concerns administrators of self-insured, employer associations, and subsequent injury accounts, but it also touches things like medical provider lists, independent medical examinations, compensation eligibility, vocational rehabilitation, reimbursement procedures, and penalties. And it also removes requirements for safety card expiration and renewal. This one also concerns NRS chapters 616A through 616D, but also in addition, chapter 617 of NRS, which governs Nevada's workers' compensation and occupational diseases framework. So much of the discussion of why this bill would be relevant to us is the same as it is for AB 332. We have not finished completely analyzing every section of this bill, as it's much newer than AB 332, and it has, to my knowledge, not yet had a hearing. And so we are working with, obviously we're in conjunction with USI and the sponsoring Assembly Member Danielle Gallant regarding this particular provision of the bill, which, yes, that would be section 34. So that's literally the last part of the 50 or so page bill. And so we'll have more information on how the other much more minute changes affect our operations once we've had a chance to review. But as of right now, our reasons for tracking AB 469 are the same as AB 332, at least in regards to the premium cap.
And it has the same language that may, and it's section 3 on page 6 again, so we can look into that.
Yes, that is correct. I will find the commonality between those two provisions as they exist in these bills.
Okay, I think we're same problems that the other one had. So next, Bill.
Excellent. So, okay, I promise we're done talking about insurance. Now we can go ahead and talk about the environment. So Senate Bill 324 proposes a prohibition on the sale, offering for sale, or distribution for sale of water in disposable plastic bottles with a capacity of 4 liters or less within any community that abuts the Lake Tahoe watershed. The bill grants enforcement authority to the Attorney General, including the ability to inspect properties for compliance. I will note at the bill's hearing, sorry, all the days are running together, but I'm pretty sure it was this week. The sponsoring Senator Melanie Scheibel noted that the bill's language was more or less wholesale imported from California's South Lake Tahoe community. They operate a similar set up there as it relates to inspecting for these small water bottles. I will say the genesis for this bill, I was able to glean a little bit more about from the testimony. So water bottles under this particular size are the most common item of trash pulled out of Lake Tahoe. This excludes like soda and Gatorade. This is purely, strictly drinking water bottles 4 liters or smaller. And so for this reason, that's why they're bringing this legislation forward. The question for us on this bill is the definition of abuts the Lake Tahoe watershed, and also whether or not we qualify for, we're part of a different basin, I believe, than Lake Tahoe, but you'll notice my title doesn't say geologist or hydrologist, so we're working.
We're actually part of multiple basins.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So we are part of the Lake Tahoe Basin.
Yes.
Okay, so then there's
Our boundary does in fact go to the middle of Lake Tahoe.
Right.
Okay, so then our presence in the other basins wouldn't affect this provision, and also that actually does affect some of our neighbors because it does say watershed. And so this is not an issue that is specific to Carson City, and the reason I bring it up is because the amendment offered at the hearing earlier this week for this bill placed enforcement authority for this provision squarely on the health authority for the communities that this abut the Lake Tahoe watershed. And so obviously with a whole new enforcement authority and procedure, this is something we want to pay attention to and get more information from Senator Scheibel on how she and I guess the Legislative Council Bureau would envision some some of the finer points of this and whether or not there's any opportunity to amend and provide some input on what enforcement responsibilities we may wind up having as a result of the passage of this legislation. I will say, just like the bills before it, has not had a work session, and we are working with partner communities to interact with the senator and LCB as a whole, as jointly affected communities on this. And so I will provide more updates to the board as I am able to understand more of the senator's enforcement ideas, which weren't discussed a lot outside of the fact that it was moving as a result of the amendment from the Attorney General's office, which previously in my previous testimony I read out as the original scope of the bill. But the amendment certainly changes it to much more heavily involve us, and that is the reason that I have brought it up today. You'll see it's very short, 3 sections, but we're just working to understand more about where this came from, where it's going, and how it might affect us, given its amendment.
So,
the amendment would put the enforcement on Carson City?
Correct, via our health authority.
Because Section 1 puts it on the Attorney General.
Yes, that was a point of some discussion, pulling it off. They felt that the local communities were given that we already do inspect, for other things, that it was an easier or cleaner way to do it. And that was basically the sentiment behind it, as I understood it at the hearing.
So I just want to start with a few issues or concerns. So I serve on the Tahoe Transportation District. So we have 14 different entities that are working to protect transportation and protect the clarity of the water there. And like you said, the emphasis of the bill is there is the city of South Lake Tahoe that implemented this. But I think there's a difference that's not being accounted for, right? So almost all of their property abuts the lake itself, right? So they're thinking a sale even at Rayleigh's or at the Safeway where somebody is going to be taken to the lake. I just think that this bill is saying that we can have no sales in Carson City whatsoever. So that means you can't host a barbecue in your backyard and have single serve water.
Go to Fallon and buy that water and bring it in.
Well, there you go. But you see where I'm going with this. It doesn't say that it is retail stores within the basin. I could be more comfortable with what they're trying to achieve there if it said within the basin itself. What this bill does is says no sales in Lyon County, no sales in Douglas County, no sales in Carson City of single serve water. And part of me on one side recognizes that, but it does not stop single serve. Okay, I'll say it, my favorite thing, Diet Coke, right? So does that mean people are going to be less healthy? Because I want them drinking water when they're out and they need hydration. So I think one thing begets another, right? Oh, great, I can't have a single serve cold water. I'll go ahead and take that Diet Coke or that Coca-Cola. So I just think you're going to transfer. So I think the intention is good. And I think they're indicated yesterday in the meeting that they are seeing a marked improvement. But I don't think stopping the sales in all of Carson City is fitting of this bill. So I'm thinking we may, but I don't know, would it help our landfill? I guess you could look the other way and say, okay, there's no single serve water bottles anymore. Do we, the objective from the meeting
Go to landfill.
was to tell people to have a thermos or whatever and use your tap water. That's the whole emphasis of their, so I want to say the other side of the coin is they want to get rid of single serve, starting with water, but I guess it'll go further. So Supervisor Giomi?
Yeah, I agree with your comment in terms of the, they could change it to say prohibiting the sale, offer for sale or distribution within the Lake Tahoe watershed.
Yeah.
And then it would affect Carson City were someone to open something in our part of the county that, you know, is in the watershed. And I think it falls short of why wouldn't it be all plastic bottles?
Yep.
If you're going to do it, why wouldn't it be all plastic? Why is water the mean culprit? I mean, I'm sure it's the most sold, but I get that. But we've all been to the beach, and there's a lot of different plastic bottles that come out. And then the other side of it, an unintended consequence, does that mean we're going to have beaches full of glass bottles? That's what starts to concern me. And I think most of the parks prohibit it, but, you know, I'm worried exactly that that's going to end up leading to cooler checks when you start, anyway. Get the point.
Why don't we just reject this kind of nonsense out
I
of
don't
hand?
think it's nonsense.
Supervisor Schutte?
I think this is reasonable, and what makes sense to me in terms of water is that water is easily accessible in a way that soda isn't.
It's true.
And so,
At the beach?
but people can bring, but
I know.
you know what? Folks pack sandwiches, folks pack food, folks pack other items. And so you can also bring a 4-liter or higher container of water. And in our hallway, just out here, there's a place to fill up water bottles. Water fountains are being, you know, we now frequently see fountains where you can fill up water bottles. And so I think this is a reasonable mitigation in light of what is happening to our basin, in light of the pollution, in light of the issues that we're facing. I understand that there is some pushback, and I appreciate the concerns. The reality is recycling really isn't efficient, and there is a lot of plastic that actually isn't recycled. It ends up in landfill. And so this is a way to be mindful and mitigate how we move forward. So this is not stopping water. Water is accessible. And folks, as they pack food, they can pack water. I think it's a reasonable bill, but I also agree 100% with what you're saying about really within the Lake Tahoe Basin specifically, adjacent to the lake.
Well, I agree with you, because otherwise, then why don't we just make this a statewide bill and say nobody can have single-serve water? Why would you say that the residents of Carson City or Douglas County or Lyon County can't have that water bottle right there? You know, but everybody else can. So I don't have a problem when you're trying to mitigate the cleanliness and the clarity and the preservation of Lake Tahoe. I certainly understand that, but I really think it should be limited to what you're trying to achieve, instead of saying, unless the purpose, like I said, is to really just eliminate single serve in the entire state, you know, that you won't be able to do that. So those are my thoughts on that. Supervisor Horton?
What they're trying to achieve is admirable. I get it. It's a little silly in doing it. You know, it's going to impact our, you know, vendors, and it's going to have an economic effect on us. And you're not banning anything other than plastic water bottles. So, as we said, soda pop and other things that come in bottles are going to be a problem. What is the second most popular item of trash found in the lake? Do you know?
I do not know.
I'm just curious. You know, maybe they could ban that as well. Here's the deal. Enforcement is what needs to happen, not banning counties from selling water. They need to enforce the trash on the beaches. They need people to go out, to park rangers, and enforce people who are littering the lake and littering on the beaches. It's ridiculous, having been there numerous times and seen it myself. My wife always takes a trash bag with her, and she picks up Sand Harbor every time she goes. It's outrageous. But if they went to enforcement rather than this wild, let's ban things, you know, that'll do it. It's not going to. People are going to take water. They're going to do it no matter what. If you don't have enforcement behind it, it serves no purpose. It's a little silly.
Supervisor Schutte?
But I think there's a bigger picture here, the impact of plastics. The reality is there is a problem, and this is a way to help address it. It doesn't have to be 0 to 100. It's not all or nothing. This is a way to help reduce, and it's a reasonable way that people still have access to water. I think it's a step in the right direction.
I just don't think there's free water at the lake, so. If there was, where it was, well, yeah, but I'm just saying, if it was great where there was truly fill-up stations and things along the beach, I would be happier, but there isn't.
And with improvements, though, when there's a water fountain, and there are water fountains at the lake, and so you can fill up containers. And as improvements continue, there will be more areas to fill up water, you know, the spigots. We have that already.
Okay, next.
All right, so then moving on to SB 402. Senate Bill 402 authorizes the creation of restoration improvement districts by counties and cities for the purposes of restoring certain buildings that are at least 50 years old. The bill allows a municipality to pledge property tax revenue above a base year level to support restoration efforts within the district. It sets out requirements for contracts, financing, and wage standards, and then they're codified in a new chapter of Title 22 of NRS. And so this would be kind of, I think, a development tool in the city's arsenal, given that we do have properties within our boundaries that would qualify for what this bill is doing. And so I believe it has had a hearing. I will double check. Perhaps it was today, or I might be confusing it with the next bill, which is having a hearing right now. Sorry. Apologies, they're both fours, and so my brain is a little scrambled. But so this one, yeah, it's just kind of a new development tool, and we think we could definitely make use of this were it to be signed into law. And so that's something I want to bring to your attention as a positive point in the legislature that this bill I think might allow us to do some relatively cool things, especially to our downtown. So for that reason, it's fairly lengthy in its 13 sections, but I can go into more detail. I know that we do also have planning here as well, if there are more technical questions about how specifically we might benefit from these provisions if they were to be signed into law. But that is essentially the long and short of it. It's just another development tool. Not just, sorry, it is a quality tool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I said it. Whoops. I was trying to get through session without using one of those, and yep.
I think it really is just a tool. It's a bill of opportunity. And I think that I look at this one is if you truly have an old building that you really want to keep it historic on its exterior, but they're super expensive for anyone to come and to invest in. And so their vacancy is the blight in the community, but you want the austerity of those beautiful pillars or the art that's in the building or things of that nature. So I think it's a tool. I don't know how readily we would look at anything, but considering it has to have been vacant for 10 years, certainly during all the listening sessions and everything that we had concerning the master plan, what are some tools or some things we can do to help get our vacant buildings occupied? So I think this is just, again, a tool, not a mandatory, and as long as it stays optional, I'm okay with looking towards that. Supervisor Giomi?
Yeah, I think one of the things, I like the bill from that regard. I think one of the things that is often lost on people is that as a building stays vacant and codes change, it becomes more and more costly to redevelop and so, or to rehabilitate. And so this sort of gives a nod to that the longer something remains vacant, the more difficult it is to restore it as opposed to just tearing it down. So I think it comes from a good place. I like the bill, or at least the intent behind it. I think back to the V&T rail house or the engine house we had here, 25 years ago, and could this have been, realized it was on private property but who knows, maybe something could have been done there. There was talk years and years ago about putting shops in there and, anyway.
I think maybe if it had an opportunity for a 20-year help in
Bond.
the payback, it might have been able to make it.
Yeah.
Like you said. Supervisor White?
I think for some clarification, I'd like to take a look at section 7, where it says you adopt an ordinance describing the boundaries of a building restoration project. I'm sorry. Adopting an ordinance describing the boundaries of the district, which must be the geographic boundaries of a building restoration project. So does that say we're going to create all these little individual districts?
If we wanted.
That was my interpretation, that yes, you would have to create the not zone, but the district first in order to use this. So yes, it does have kind of a new area designation that you would need to have the property reside in before you could use any of the provisions enumerated later.
The purpose of the bill is to distinguish it between a redevelopment district, like you said, which is I'm just declaring this whole area, versus I want to go, and this will allow you to cherry pick something that's 50 years old.
Cherry pick.
That's the truth, right? I'm just being honest, right? I can go in there and say, I'm just going to draw it around these 2 or 3 parcels that make up this particular property that's 50 years old and been vacant for 10 years. Well, we can do, I think again, it falls with, I heard loud and clear from the public, is do something with the vacant buildings. And this is the only tool that I've actually seen that we potentially could exercise. I don't have anything to force someone that wants to come to Carson City and put in a new business. We can't force them and say, sorry, you can only locate in a vacant building. We can't do that. But this is an opportunity to maybe take something that's grand in our community and help get it off the ground, get it employing people, paying sales tax, because this is only the property tax and it's only ours. It's not eliminating the property tax from the school district or any of the other state. Keep
So
their
let's
17
take a look
cents.
at section 3, number 3. The owner of the building may hold a business license to operate a business at the site of the building, whether or not the owner holds a license. Can you explain that to me?
The lessee. The lessee versus the owner of the building. Two
The
different
owner of a
bodies.
building may hold a business license,
Right.
whether or not the owner holds a license.
So is it?
Yeah, no, I'm
The owner
reading
of
that
the
provision.
business
Now.
versus the building.
Right.
That's what it's designating.
What's that?
Two different people. The owner of the building versus the owner of the business. It's not always the same. Either one can have a license or both.
Hope Sullivan, Community Development Director. I actually picked up on that, but I didn't worry about it because you used the word may. If it's a vacant building, chances are there's no business license.
Right.
Because there's nothing happening. And I'll just, in reading this, my feeling was it was just another tool in the toolbox. If somebody wanted to avail themselves of it, I agree with the mayor. We've heard a lot from the community about vacant buildings. Whether or not Carson City chose to avail themselves of this, should it be adopted, is a decision for the Board of Supervisors. But it's simply a tool, and it's not a mandate at this point.
Well, what we have here, though, is the use of the pronoun owner in 2 different places. It is apparently 2 different people. It's not clear that it's 2 different people.
So would the language, would it be helpful to say whether or not the owner of the business holds such a license?
Well,
Doesn't matter.
making.
They'll fix it in this session.
I think we're shooting in the dark here, trying to extrapolate what we think LCB meant. I think we have to go ask LCB what they mean and get them to clarify that better. At any rate, as the mayor said, this is indeed kind of like a mini redevelopment opportunity. But my feeling remains the same as the redevelopment district. I do not believe it's appropriate to take sales tax from where we need it to go to profit private business. If these people can't afford to upkeep and maintain their buildings, they need to sell them to somebody that can and not rely on the taxpayers to support their businesses.
Well, I don't think it's a lot different than our historic tax deferments that we give to
You're right.
people that are willing to buy a historic building or home and know that they have to put more work. They have to go to a historic resource commission. I guess it's an emphasis, and I'll go too because they've been pounding on us for this. What's your, your small town charm? Your historic buildings are part of that component. So I just say it's a tool, and I'll support the tool. It doesn't mean we'll have properties that will come in that entice us, or that they're designs that they're going to show us on how they're going to keep it historic. We might not, if they say, nope, not going to do it for me. So I just think it's a tool, just so. What else you got, Cameron?
All right, thank you, Mayor. And we're almost done. Last one. So Assembly Bill 444 proposes multiple revisions to the regulation and administrative procedures of both state agencies and, more importantly, to local governments like us in relation to economic impact assessments, and then rule adoption processes and notifying affected business groups. This bill imposes new procedural requirements on state agencies and aligns local government rulemaking with those requirements. It expands the definition of a rule under NRS 237.060 to include actions affecting sales and use taxes and authorizes legal remedies for violations. And then it updates the notice requirements for the imposition of impact fees by local governments under NRS Chapter 278B. So this one is a bit more simple than the others. We've got 5 sections here. The question to us is making sure that we understand, and by the way, this is that bill that's being heard right now that I'll be following up with after this meeting to kind of see more about what was said and whether or not any amendments were proposed. At this time, I'm not seeing any. But the question for us here is the definition of, what is an affected business, making sure we hit every entity that LCB might mean with this provision. As has been pointed out previously, we have businesses that are members of the Carson City Chamber of Commerce, which, by the way, is chambers of commerce are specifically enumerated in the bill, that, are from outside the community. We need to make sure that we understand fully the groups of businesses this bill instructs us to notify, and also make sure that it's the same. And so that's basically what we're doing with this bill, engaging with the sponsor to make sure we understand that, and that we aren't in the position of having to inform maybe more people than we anticipate, or and definitely not leaving anyone out, as this bill does specifically enumerate why that's a bad idea. And so that's questions that are ongoing, but we're engaging with the bill sponsor. And like I said, the hearing will definitely shed some more light on some of this stuff for us. But that's the very last bill that I have for you. And that's really the potential impact to us, is just notification requirements. That's what we're focusing on here.
Yeah, I'm really concerned. I don't like things that say insofar as practicable, because that's somebody's definition that won't be ours. But what bothers me the most is I don't see a restriction that puts it to your own jurisdiction. So I could be the small business administrator. I could be somebody outside of Carson City that doesn't even have a business, but maybe dressmakers all belong to this particular trade association.
Maybe they have
which
a broader agenda.
Yeah, right?
That has nothing to do with us.
Has not, so my concern is that this bill did not limit it to chambers and trade associations within your own jurisdiction. Because we know that the Manufacturers Association or the Builders Alliance, these are all ones that are here in Carson City. So it wouldn't be that hard for us to recognize them, know who they are, and send them a notice. But I'm not going to know who's in Reno or Sacramento or anywhere else that might be representing small businesses in Carson City. So I just think it's too broad. That's a comment. Supervisor Giomi.
I think to your point, you know, if those associations exist and they have members in the community, to the extent it's possible, they could reach out to the member who could then provide a comment. So I think it would give them that opportunity. I guess my question is, have we had an instance here in Carson where we have experienced a problem where we've somehow missed notifying an agency that had an impact on our ordinances? Have we run into an instance where someone has said to us, hey, you never reached out to me?
Not that we know of.
I mean, are we trying
Not
to solve
that
a
I'm
problem
aware
that
of.
doesn't exist? I guess that's my question.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I agree with what's been said about the broadness, if you will, of Section 1, 2B, and if it was within our jurisdiction. But as somebody who may have to implement this, what's the scope of trade associations? The other concern I have is in Section 2, B, we're supposed to report on the total number of small businesses likely affected by the proposed regulation. I find that to be incredibly difficult and would not want to sign up for that if I didn't have to, because I don't know how we do that. And so I
You
want to
just write
flag
every
that for
time
you
all
as well.
businesses. You just say everyone.
Right.
I know, that's your cover
So
though. which-
I do agree with what's been said, that it's very broad, but I did want to point out that second part.
Thank you. Supervisor Wade?
Yeah, speaking to how broad is this notification, Section 1B, noticing members who are owners or officers that may be a member of the Chamber of Commerce or a trade association. So now we have to run around and find out who's an officer and what trade association it might belong to? I don't think so, Tim.
Well, and some of that isn't public. I mean,
Right.
I mean, they don't have to disclose that anywhere.
No. Shell to shell to shell. Yeah. Okay.
Well, if you're a business and an officer, you're registered at the Secretary of State's office. So if you want to go digging,
My point is, you're right. You can find it. You can dig,
But
because it isn't
who's
readily
going to
available.
do that for a notice? Right.
No, I'm agreeing with you.
Exactly.
especially with the language of officers. That's, I don't think they understand how big this is going to grow, what sort of mushroom they're making.
Okay. All right. Let's, that was the last one, right? Let's see if I have any public comment on legislation. And then we'll bring it back up here and run through them.
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor and Supervisors. Robin Orloff here. I had a question about one of the bills that I believe Carson City is following. It was brought up in the Parks and Rec meeting the other night. It's AB 421. And I'm bringing up now, even though it wasn't presented, I believe Mr. Gresh is following it. It has to do with the conservation easement. I don't understand the legalese if, I don't know if Mr. Gresh is allowed to address that. But it might be something that we need to look at. I don't know if it has to do with the duration or the in perpetuity phrase of that. So maybe the next Board of Supervisor meeting, legislation session, that could be discussed. Thank you.
What number was that?
It was AB 429, conservation easement. 429.
Okay. You said
AB
what?
429. Thank you.
Fix it. Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Mr. Reyes.
Good morning. Andrew Razor, Carson City Treasurer, and also the President for the Association of County Treasurers in Nevada. 2 months ago, I brought before you the County Treasurer's bill, which is AB 133. And at that time, the original part of the bill had that for the creation of a treasurer tech fund, it would come from the excess proceeds of the sale of a house. And the way the bill was originally intended was that the treasurer tech fund would be taken immediately off of those front part of the excess proceeds. Since that time, we've done an amendment to the bill, and now that bill has since changed to where the county will still get the original $1,300 that would go to it up front from the excess proceeds, and then the county treasurer would have to wait a period of 1 year in which somebody would have the opportunity or the legal right to claim those excess proceeds. And then once that 1 year period had expired, if no claim was submitted, then the county treasurer would then take 5% of the excess proceeds, and then the remaining 95% would go to the county general fund. So just to give you a quick part on that, is if there was $100,000 in excess proceeds after the county had gotten, the sale or the tax for the property, then that would sit in a separate interest-bearing account for 1 year. And if nobody made a claim, then $5,000 would go to the treasurer tech fund, and then the remaining $95,000 would go to the county general fund. Keep in mind that excess proceeds aren't a given. It's not something that the county can budget for every year because it depends on if there's going to be a tax deed sale. And so that still means that if we had excess proceeds sitting in an independent account, that somebody could claim it, and then if they claimed it and the treasurer did award it, then those excess proceeds were gone, and then there would be no money for the excess, for that treasurer tech fund. One of the other amendments that we made following the March 20th presentation before the Assembly Committee is the Assembly members wanted some type of guardrail protections on it, just to make sure that this didn't become a slush fund or become funding that became unsupervised. And so that in addition to the amendment that's already there, that every year the treasurer has to provide a report to the county commissioner, the board of supervisor, that if the funds weren't being used after a period of 3 years, then the board of county commissioners or board of supervisors in this instance could then look at that and decide if they want to revert 50% of those unused funds back to the county general fund. And so that's the amendment for this bill, that AB 133. And so we're just requesting that the different county commissions and the board of supervisors here, if they agree with it, to please support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I have any other? Mr. French?
Thank you very much. Denny French, Carson City. I'd like to ditto on Ms. Orloff's AB 429. And I'd also like to add, and I didn't know when it would be appropriate to do this. I was going to wait for the last statement. But I'd also like to have consideration, because we are a B city, AB 85 would change B's, the invertebrates status to wildlife. And that, I think, will help us gain access to certain grants that would not necessarily be available under others, as far as another add-on for support and consideration of environment. So I'd like to have that also considered. And it's one of the things that was brought up at the wildlife advisory meeting as a supportive, they were supportive of it, or at least had it in the considerations to watch. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Supervisor Giomi?
If you're coming back to us.
Yep, I am.
Cameron, I'm curious. I mean, I know what, NACO has heard and from the rural caucus. I'm just wondering what you've heard about the county pay bill and your take on that.
Thank you for the question, Supervisor Giomi. So we have actually, as Carson City, reached out to stakeholders outside the legislature at the request, actually, before NACO requested us, we were already advocating for that at the highest levels of government and making sure that the various caucuses within the legislature were okay with it. As of right now, I believe the parties are in agreement on where text is at. The bill was heard. I have unclear if it has come up. I do not believe it has come up for a work session yet because I've been in the committees, so I haven't seen it. But as of right now, I do not know of any specific obstacles or impediments to its passage. We are more, and we being the entire coalition, not just Carson City, but the entire coalition of public entities and county governments that have rallied behind this bill, some begrudgingly, are doing their best to advocate for this. And so I can certainly follow up. But as of right now, we don't have any new activity other than NACO's request that members keep advocating in the legislature, which I know we have done before we were asked and that everyone else is doing now.
Yeah. I just had heard that there was a couple of assembly members close to us who may not have been fully supportive, but anyway, so I'll let it go with that. Thanks.
Okay, let's go through the bills and see if we think we need any positions or not. So let's start with Assembly Bill 332. That's, well, sorry to say, it's Assemblyman O'Neill's bill on the 36,000 cap for workers' comp. Do we want to take any position on this bill? Do we want to wait to let its amendments come through to see what, or do we want to, well, it's an unfunded mandate, effect on local government should have been a yes. So I think we need to I think we have to take positions when we're not properly given fiscal note opportunities. And, you know, we should never miss an opportunity to tell them that they are impacting us. So even if it's, well, it's a couple $100,000 to us, so.
Can I just
Yeah,
add, I mean,
what do you think?
I don't think we necessarily have to support, remain neutral, or oppose, but we could provide direction, I believe, to Cameron to go back and say, look, you're misclassified this. It will cost us money and we can't absorb that right now. I mean, I think that's the message here.
Well, you can only, two different things. You can only testify in one of those three positions, and they don't let you do anything else.
I understand that.
But we could go to the maker of the bill.
That's what I'm talking about,
Okay.
or to the committee, or anyone, the committee
Right.
chair. You know, I mean,
Right.
the discussions can be had
Yes.
that are ex parte, if you will, of the actual testimony, you know, and I think we're fooling ourselves if we limit it to just what we can say in testimony. That's my only comment. That's my only comment.
Yeah. So do we have we would like discussion on this bill? Yes?
Discussion on
okay.
it, I mean, it's really because there are caveats that are needed at best.
Right. That's usually when, it's fine. Do you have enough direction to talk to the maker of the bill?
Yes.
Okay, and then I can always, well, any of us can talk to the maker of the bill. I talked to, he's a great representative and helps us a lot, so maybe we can reach out.
Yeah, that was my comment about just
Okay.
flat out opposing, just doesn't, you know, sometimes isn't what we want to do.
Right. Okay, Assembly Bill 469 is the one, so self-insured. One's eliminating the expiration renewal of, did we?
Essentially
completion
the same
cards?
comment.
The same thing. But it's far more reaching. So again, same thing, you're gonna reach out to Assemblymember Gallant at this point. You know, we always have because you're in the first house, I think that it's a good opportunity to just talk to members of the legislature. By the time if it crosses over to the second house, then you may have no choice but to,
Yeah, I think
testify,
that's
so-
a very
Right.
good assessment of
yeah,
the way we should approach things, because you still have an opportunity to work a bill
yes.
to improve conditions or mitigate what we're concerned about, you
Right.
know? But once it passes a house, it's much more likely to
Pass the
sail
other
through
house.
the way it is. you know?
Right.
So I
So-
agree with you.
Okay, let's go to, boy, these are getting long bills. Let's look, sorry, I should have tabbed these.
444?
I could, 402 is next, right? Or
You
did I
skipped
miss one?
444.
Oh, did I miss one?
It's not, but Cameron didn't go chronologically.
No,
which
that's
is
why I'm trying to
very-
flip through
Very
these
challenging for a tiny brain like mine, just for the record.
in the future, yeah.
Very
In
difficult.
order. Did I miss one?
If you look at the bottom, the number's right there.
Hold on, sorry.
Skew.
I was just looking for where
No,
it
four
started.
69, we just did. The next one in the packet is 402, right?
I don't know.
I'm going in packet order. Let's go with that, right? Okay, so the next one's 402, which was to allow the building restoration, the tool in the tool shed. So I would like to recommend we support this legislation.
Is that a motion?
Mhm.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for support of SB 402. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no.
No.
Let the record reflect that was 4 yeses and 1 no by Supervisor White. Okay, then SB 324. This is the water bottle one. Do we want to have our concerns? And again, he goes to Senator Scheibel and tries to get amendments. Do we need, or do we want testimony on the record? I guess that's the issue on this. Do we need testimony on the record to try and get them to limit it to the basin itself and not all of Carson City? Yeah, is this one strong enough that we want it on the record on the first side?
I think the component about defining the Tahoe Basin is critical. I don't think we can support it the way it exists.
Right. So with amendments potentially, okay. Is that your motion to testify on the record that it needs
Sure,
amendment?
I would testify on the record that the bill needs an amendment defining the,
Basin
the,
itself.
yeah, that the sale has to be focused within the Lake Tahoe Basin watershed.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. It's okay.
Which bill was that? Madam Mayor?
324,
Thank
SB
you.
324. Okay, now, did I miss any that we need did I get them all for you? 32's already are,
402,
just did,
or no, we did
we
402.
did 402.
It's,
We said yes.
444.
4.
Okay, let's go to 444. Oh, do we have, oh, I'm sorry, can't find it in this big packet. Which one was
This
444?
is the Chamber of
444 is the, yeah,
You got it.
on Hafan's bill on the Chamber of Commerce's.
The concern that it's not limited to a jurisdiction.
It includes officers and,
Do we want testimony, or he starts with the maker of the bill and tries to kind of work behind the scenes?
that's
To-
where I'd go for now.
For now on this one, behind the scenes? Everybody okay with that? Okay. What? You mean section 1? Why don't you go ahead and give a little further on that, just so the audience and everyone, because 233B does not. So, I was gonna call you Assembly Member you. That was gonna be good, or Old Bill Drafter you. He can give us maybe a little more insight.
Perhaps a future look at what might be? Okay.
Oh, there you go. Mr. You.
All right, well, thank you, Mayor. Just for purposes of clarity on the record, prior to this board taking an action on any given direction, Mr. Gresher, I do want to point out that 233B in statute does not apply to local governments such as Carson City. That is the Nevada Administrative Procedures Act that only applies to state agencies. So with respect to those provisions that are included as mandatory proposals, that has zero applicability to Carson City. I will point out that there is another section, however, with respect to the impact fees, that does apply to Carson City, as does the change in section 3 of the bill in relation to the definition of the term rule. So whereas before, or I should say right now in current existing law, rule for purposes of that definition would not include any action that relates to sales and use taxes, that exemption would be carved out. So that does apply to Carson City. But with respect to some of this other discussion in relation to, notices to the chamber and trade associations and so on and so forth, that only applies to state agencies and has zero impact on Carson City. And then since I'm just on this topic, I might as well also note that with respect to this other change, where it makes a distinction, it looks like there's a change in that conjunctive term and versus or with respect to rule. We already do that, as I think that's just sort of a clarifying effect that the legislature is doing. I know that in several other jurisdictions and with other attorneys, there have been sort of a question that's perpetuated through the years as to whether or not any sort of a rule that is simply an ordinance that's being adopted by a local government body would also require a notice, a business impact statement. The position that the DA's office has always taken in the past is that, yes, it does require it. And I think that's the proper reading. I believe the legislature agrees with that interpretation. And I think they're changing that conjunctive term to reflect that proper interpretation.
So what area of statute governs us doing business impact statements? Because if it's not in 233B, where's that?
That would be NRS Chapter 237.
In 237. And so that's only Section 3 right now.
Section 4?
Section 3 and 4 that they're talking about amending our sections. I think they're going to figure out they didn't draft it all correctly and they're coming for us. I'm okay with kind of letting it play out a
That's what
little
I would
bit
do.
and see what the amendments and what the
Yeah.
activities are, and then you can always bring it back I just somehow believe it's going to come back. They're going to figure it out. So if it's all right with everyone on that one? No? Okay. All right. And then, thank you. Yep, got something else?
Can we take up Andrew's bill? Or can we not, because it's not agendized?
It wasn't agendized for action for us to look at the amended AB
The
133.
treasurer's bill.
I'm sorry, just so I'm clear on the question. The question is, can this board take action or give direction on
Correct.
a bill?
That's the question.
That was,
Not agendized.
well,
Well,
so
it's on
what-
the list.
Right, if it's on the list, I think the answer is yes. This board has authority today to give direction because the scope of that agenda title, indicates that this is for all legislative activity purposes. Within the staff report, there is a reference to that list that is live on the website. But as that staff report also explains, that list, although the aspirational goal for staff is always to keep it updated, there may be times where it's not. So it's not that the staff report, the agenda title itself lists and identifies a closed universe of bills that this board may take action on. It's really in relation to any bill that is pending before the legislature. And I'm comfortable with that legal position. It's a yes.
It's kind of a long yes, but it was a yes.
I don't even get paid by the word, so.
That's hard to believe.
It's gratuitous.
Garrett maybe should look into that. I would like to support it. We know that there are technological needs that the treasurer's office has. We've done this with other elected officials, and I would like to support the bill.
Can we ask Andrew, I wasn't really clear.
With amendments, I should say.
Are you in support of the bill as the amendments that you were describing today?
Yes, for the record, Andrew Razor, Carson City Treasurer and President for the Association of County Treasurers in Nevada. Correct, yeah, I am in support of the bill, and so are the other treasurers for the state that are part of Acton.
Is there more work that needs to be done to make it better?
Right now, we believe we've provided the amendments that would answer the questions that the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs had for this. And the the two big questions that came out of that committee were, one, the making sure that this doesn't become a slush fund and that it has the oversight. And again, it does have the oversight because in the bill itself, similar to the treasurer tech or the tech
Assessor.
funds for the assessor and for the recorder, it has that annual report that has to be submitted to a board of county commissioners or board of supervisors. The other question that came up in the committee was, is this taking away the oversight of a board of county commissioners or board of supervisors to designate funds that should be going to the county? Again, and this is one of the questions that we responded to, is that the excess proceeds aren't something that occur every year. Some counties, yes, like maybe Nye and Clark County, but for Carson City, we haven't had a tax deed sale since 2022. We may have one property going this year based on the order you gave back in November. But by and large, Carson City has a high collection rate, and so do some of the other counties. But it also comes back to, if we do sell a property and somebody has the legal right to claim that money and we award that money to in all parts, then there wouldn't be any funding left over. And so then there wouldn't be any money for that treasure tech fund. And if I answered that question the way you,
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's 133, right?
AB 133, correct.
I'm comfortable with having us discuss it because it's a bill that you're updating us from one we already supported. So I'm comfortable bringing any amendments whenever on any bills that we're getting updates on, and do we still support it? Because it's an amendment. What I don't want to do is cherry pick off ones that we did not tell the
Right.
public we were going to talk about. But since this has already been on the list and already been before us as a discussion item, I'm comfortable now just getting the report as here's the amendments. Do we still support the bill? So Supervisor Giomi has a purple, so
Can I
go.
just make a comment to that? I don't disagree with you because unlike the legislature, we do a very good job of trying to keep the public appraised as what's going on. But the flip side of that is, as the session gets closer to the end, what you just stated may not be possible because we may have to take something up
Yes.
or stand or risk, causing issues for our community.
Yes.
So I, on the whole, I agree with what you're saying. I think we all do. But the nature of the way our legislature works, where they don't have to follow the open meeting law, it makes it so that we have to react to that.
I think there
Otherwise,
can be a period where we call our own selves exempt.
Yeah.
Right? We're
Well,
down to exempt from the standard rule because we're at the last 3 weeks and that's all.
Exempt from our
that's
standard
left.
practice. It's not a rule, but exempt from,
Right.
we're still going to be complying with the open meeting law.
Right.
Otherwise, Dan will
Perfect.
melt, and I would, yeah. Okay, so.
Perfect. Okay.
Go ahead.
Comment in regards to this coming up today. I would encourage Andrew and any other staff that are tracking specific bills to work with Cameron and get us a little more forward advance notice that this sort of stuff is coming.
Yeah,
I would like to have some documents about what you ran down today. Anyway. Go
All
ahead.
right, thank you. I move to support Assembly Bill 133 with the amendments presented on the record today by Treasurer Razor.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we are done with that item, and thank you, Cameron. Go back to work and see if we can untangle the who's on first and who's on second. Good luck with that. But thank you. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 15A, discussion and possible action to adopt on second reading Bill number 101, a proposed ordinance prohibiting unauthorized sleeping or camping in public places. Mr. Hohen, may I have the title, please?
Ordinance 2025-1, Bill 101, an ordinance relating to public safety, establishing various provisions prohibiting unauthorized sleeping or camping in public places, providing penalties, authorizing the removal of persons and personal property from public places under certain circumstances, making conforming changes to provisions relating to disorderly conduct, making conforming changes to provisions relating to camping in general, and providing other matters properly related thereto.
Thank you. District Attorney Pruitt, have you received any other public comments or determined any other changes before we move to adoption of a second reading?
So I had received some questions or concerns regarding some state court litigation that took place in Grants Pass. It does not affect the ordinance that we have before this body. Essentially, Grants Pass, or the state of Oregon, has some additional laws that govern camping and requiring jurisdictions to provide campsites and some other things that we don't have within our regulatory framework. So as it stands, nothing has disturbed the Supreme Court's decision on this matter, and so I don't have any additional changes to propose.
Okay. Anybody have a question? No questions? Is there any public comment before we take action? Denny?
I'd like to thank everybody that worked on this. I would like to say at first it sounded very inhumane. And at other readings and other observations of it and explanations, a great deal of thought was put into this. Discretionary considerations by the sheriff and other observers, whether they're park rangers and such, as to appropriateness of a person's location when they're sleeping, still has as a bit of a vagueness to me. And as I've observed, sheriffs relating to individuals that have fallen asleep, they are not brutal. I do appreciate the humanity in that and the humane actions. But I do appreciate this. I still have trouble with any ordinance suggesting people can't sleep as long as they're not obstructing locations. But thank you.
Do you have any other public comment? Okay, then I'll bring it back up here to the board. Would someone like to make a motion? Supervisor Horton.
I move to adopt on second reading Bill number 101, ordinance number 2025-1.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous, and welcome. Well, we already left. Oh, no. Congratulations on your first one of the 2025 year. Thank you. Many more to come? Oh, there you go. Okay, we're now going to move on to agenda item number 16, which is our non-action items. I don't see anybody with their hand up. Do you have any updates, city manager?
No, it wasn't, because you were too fast.
All right, looks like the next meeting on April 17th will be a fairly short meeting, but just wanted to let everyone know. To be ready for May 1st because that's the budget meeting and the master plan.
Bring our sleeping bags.
Yeah, something. Yeah, we're looking to consider having the master plan at 5:30, just so that if there's anyone, that hasn't been able to make a comment and wanted to make a comment because of work schedules, that they can. And that's very typical what we do on all major planning issues. We start at 5:30, but so yes, sleeping bags, pizza, I don't know. Just start thinking it's a long day. I also want to bring up that on May 4th at 10:30, NAMI is having a walk from across from the Nugget, what do we call that, Arlington Square maybe or whatever, to the legislature and back to raise money, like a little walkathon. And so if anybody would like to join me and get on a team or do anything to support NAMI, I think didn't they just do a grant or something for like $90,000 to our sheriff's office? And
What is NAMI? Sorry.
that's our Alliance for Mental Health
Oh,
Issues and
right.
things
Thank
like that. So if you all want to join in a little walk, the mayor from let's not have Reno come to Carson City and beat us or whatever, right? It is May 4th at 10:30. I'll have the executive office will send out a flyer on it for all of us where we could
It's a Sunday.
register. It's a Sunday, so it should be easier for people to attend maybe, but let's see if we can't show some support for mental illness. See what we can do to help. Supervisor Giomi.
I think I mentioned to you previously from a NACO meeting that Nevada the Humboldt-Toiyabe National Forest is providing the U.S. Capitol Christmas tree. And it'll be the first time the state of Nevada has provided the Christmas tree for the Capitol. And so but what I didn't realize at the time until this last NACO meeting was that in addition to that one large tree, there are also 50 additional trees that will be supplied for the various office buildings around the Capitol. And so as a result of that, they're in need of ornaments, like 10,000 ornaments. So I wanted to get that word out. Of course, the appeal left, but so if you have, the theme is Starry Skies to Neon Lights, Spirit of the Silver State. So the local ornaments that Mayor Bagwell has worked on over the years that we've all grown to know and love. We're going to be sending those in. They're trying to get 50. NACO's trying to get 50 ornaments from each county. Certainly, if we could do more, that's great. So yeah, 10,000 of them, 6,000 4 to 6 inch ones, 500 8 to 10 inch ones, and almost 4,000 larger ones for the big tree that are waterproof. So if you're interested or know someone who's interested, it's the Forest Service. You can go to the local office on South Carson and drop off an ornament. They need to be there by the beginning of September. And in addition to that, NACO is working with every county to sponsor a tree skirt, and every county will get a wedge to decorate how they want. It'll be put into a tree skirt and provided. So it's kind of exciting. They're looking at a couple of different places to cut the big tree. I think one is here in the Pine Nuts. The other one's down on Mount Charleston. But some of the smaller trees are going to come from various regions of the Humboldt-Toiyabe, which I think, as we all know, is the largest national forest in the contiguous United States.
Why don't they cut it out of the Toiyabe Range in central Nevada?
Well,
Part of that.
I don't know.
system.
Yeah, I don't know that I had an opportunity to influence where they're going to cut. They just told me where they're, and I don't know that they're not going to take some from the middle of Nevada. I don't know that, but
Cut over here, you might get the beetle imported to the East Coast.
yeah.
Cut out central Nevada, there's no beetles there yet.
They were talking about the large tree when I asked the new U.S. Forest Service district ranger where they were going to cut from, and he said that they were working with their resource people and the feds. Those are the two areas they mentioned. We're out here in the Pine Nuts somewhere and in Charleston. I think they're probably leaning towards Charleston. These trees are a little bit bigger there. That was it. Exciting. It's exciting. So if you want to make an ornament, you have a young one who wants to make an ornament, it's pretty cool that it'll be sitting in our Capitol, for Christmas.
Very cool. This year's ornament, just for fun then, because we've been talking today about.
Oh yeah,
The
talk about it. I
series,
saw a
it's
proof.
a pretty
It's
good one,
beautiful.
huh?
It's one of my favorites.
Thank you. Thank you. Been working on, and my friend Jeannie helps me with these, but it'll be the Brewery Arts Center, and it's got the old beer barrels. And anyway, I hope everyone will really enjoy the ornament. And maybe, September. Oh, it might be close where I
Yeah.
can put one of them
Well,
in the brand new ornament.
What
in
I
that
told the
box.
mayor, and I hope she'll work on this, is that, there've been roughly how many ornaments over the years since 2003?
Yeah,
So about
2003
20.
had two that year.
So,
but-
so maybe, for the 25th anniversary, perhaps,
Oh, yeah.
you put together a package where
full
you can
set.
buy the whole set
Mhm.
and do it as a fundraiser for something, for NAMI or somebody else,
Right.
Because
You think-
I would.
think we'd
I
get a
mean,
lot of people
You need to
that
have
would like a full
250
set
of
of
them.
them?
I think people would buy a whole set. I mean, I know that there were years that I missed that, there's also been years when I don't put a tree up, so I didn't get an ornament. Anyway.
Perfect. Supervisor Shooty.
I just want to give a shout out to the CERT team. So last Saturday, Serge Duarte, and he and the volunteers, Mr. Hone was there. So it was their academy practicum, and really impressive. Just the different stages and the emergency response outreach, and then later in the afternoon, the debrief and the questions. And I just, it's community support is always wonderful, and just kudos to all the people who participated and gave up evenings and weekends in order to contribute to this community. I just wanted to say it was great.
Anybody else? I don't see any other hands up. So we will go to final public comment. Ms. Orloff.
Hello again, Robin Orloff, Carson City. I was listening to the meeting earlier today, couldn't get in because I was caring for a sick dog, but I had a question about the grant, the wildfire grant for Prison Hill, Southeast Prison Hill. And I understand that the grant will be rescinded if the city doesn't get the match of 990,000 something. And the qualification for that match is that an underserved community will be impacted by the fire. And I just had a question about that because the Southeast mapped community off Gentry, that whole area is not, I don't believe, considered an underserved community. So I'm wondering how the community fits in Census 6.02 and 6.01, what the rationale is for that, if that could be explained. You might not be able to respond, but I could reach out to you after the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other final?
Denny French, Carson City. A lot of consideration as to this comment has been made by me, and I would appreciate that you would just hear it out. I'm looking forward to an opportunity to thank Ms. Paulson specifically for her efforts as a city manager. However, moving on from that, the considerations for the new city manager in mind, I'd like to say that I don't feel it should be a requirement that someone lives here. I don't think their dedication or their involvement or their skills. In fact, I actually believe someone that's come somewhere, even if it's just a few miles off of Carson City edge, should be excluded from consideration because they do not live here. I think that consideration on do not think here is the bigger part. If they're not going to be committed to this community, we should be able to figure that out fairly quickly. If they're not qualified, even quicker. So I feel, well, I already know who I'd prefer to in, but I'm not supposed to be mentioning names in meetings, calling people out. The main thing is that I do not feel that requirement, regardless of what individuals decide to do, if they want to move here because it's just going to be more convenient. I just don't think it should be a requirement. I just don't see that as we're a multi-faceted circumstance here. We have our parks, we have our business, we have our, all these different things, and those that come from other places bring with them perhaps knowledge and understandings that will improve our situations while still being dedicated to the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other? Okay, then if there is no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all for a good meeting and discussions. Another one done.